Hi, welcome to Break the Bonds of Tyranny and part 4 of our 5-part series on choosing the right candidates in 2012. Want to make a real and lasting difference and not just talk about it? Then you've come to the right place. I would like to take a moment and speak directly to those men and women who feel that they're being led and called to a higher purpose. Specifically, those who are feeling compelled to enter into public service by becoming an elected representative of the people. Those among us who wish to represent their friends, families, and neighbors in elected office. Let's speak candidly for a moment to see if you've got what it takes to become a refounding candidate. Becoming a representative in elected office at any level of government is a sober responsibility. It's no joke. It's serious business and not to be taken lightly. And if you're a true patriot, unlike most men and women in politics these days, you will want to honestly examine yourself and your motives before you throw your hat in the ring. So what does it take to become a refounding candidate? What does it take to be a successful leader? And what does it take to be a responsible representative from your community? If you've watched or listened to the other messages in this series leading up to this one, you might be tempted to answer, well, anyone who signs the Liberty Oath. If you did, you would only be partially correct. The 20th century philosopher Napoleon Hill outlined the following key attributes of a successful and responsible leader. The first attribute of a successful and responsible leader is unwavering courage, based upon knowledge of oneself and of one's occupation. No follower wants to be dominated by a leader who lacks self-confidence and courage, and no intelligent follower will be dominated by such a leader very long. Next is self-control. Leaders who cannot control themselves can never control others. Self-control sets a mighty example for one's followers, which the more intelligent will emulate. Next, we have firm decision-making. Leaders who waver in their decisions show that they're not sure of themselves. An indecisive leader cannot lead others successfully for very long, I can assure you. Another important attribute is sureness of plans. Successful leaders must plan their work and work their plan. A leader who moves by guesswork without practical, definite plans is comparable to a ship without a rudder. Sooner or later, he or she will land on the rocks. The habit of doing more than one is paid for is an absolute must. One of the requirements of leadership is an absolute willingness upon the part of the leader to do more than he or she requires of his or her followers. A pleasing personality is another. No slovenly, careless person can become a successful leader. Leadership calls for respect. Some of the characteristics of a pleasing personality include positive mental attitude, flexibility, sincerity, promptness of decision, courtesy, tactfulness, pleasing tone of voice, and the habit of smiling. And don't forget, tolerance. The next important attribute is sympathy and understanding. Successful leaders must be in sympathy with their followers. Moreover, they must understand them and their problems. After this is mastery of detail. Successful leadership calls for mastery of the details of the leader's position. One of the rarest attributes of successful and responsible leadership is the willingness to assume full responsibility. The successful leader must be willing to assume responsibility for the mistakes and shortcomings of both him or herself and his or her followers. If a leader tries to shift this responsibility, he or she will not remain the leader for long without the use of force. True leaders also take responsibility for their followers. If a follower makes a mistake or purposefully messes up and shows him or herself to be incompetent, the leader must consider that it is he or she who has failed and be the first one to openly admit as much. And lastly, we have the principle of cooperation. The successful leader must understand and apply the principle of cooperative effort and be able to induce his or her followers to do the same without sacrificing principle. Cooperation, properly applied, is an art form few are able to master. But for the successful and responsible leader, it is going to be absolutely indispensable. Of course, this is by no means a definitive list, but it gives you some idea of the qualities you will need to possess if you are to responsibly and successfully both lead and represent your constituents. In addition to these attributes, you must be willing to commit yourself to the defense of liberty and our republic. You must be willing to adhere to both the letter and the spirit of our Constitution, and you must be willing to be held accountable. This means a willingness to sign both the Redeclaration of Independence and the Liberty Oath. Still wanting to become a refounding candidate? Then Break the Bonds of Tyranny wants to hear from you. Break the Bonds of Tyranny welcomes candidates from all levels of government and all parties. So, if you're currently a candidate for elected office, or you want to become a candidate, and you believe that you have the right stuff and are being called to public office, go to breakthebondsoftyranny.org to find out more about becoming a refounding candidate. Then, let us know who you are. If you're listening to this message and you're not a candidate, we urge you to encourage every candidate in your area to do the right thing by becoming a refounding candidate and signing the Liberty Oath. A few good men and women in elected office can win the war against tyranny in America, and in doing so, change the world.